Oopsie, go back. Good evening. Welcome to our Tuesday nights with Mira and Mark, 3D Learner. We're glad to have you. Hopefully, you've had a lovely Labor Day weekend if you're hearing this live, and or if you're hearing this obviously as a repeat. And hopefully, everybody's first days of school have gotten off to a really great start. We're going to talk. I'm Mira Halbert, my husband Mark Halbert. We're directors and founders of 3D Learner, who help the bright, right brain, kinesthetic, hands-on learner be all he or she could be. We're going to talk we have a little bit of a change. We've been talking for the last number of weeks about goal setting, about how to be able to help your right brain learner be outrageously successful. But we encourage you to go to our YouTube channel or follow us on our Facebook I recordings. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love comments. We'd love questions. But we decided tonight to talk a little bit about whatever everybody's sort of talking about are these NAEP results. And what is NAEP, which is the National Association of Educational Professionals. And I will have Mark explain a little bit about how these results are found and what they're done. But for those of you that haven't seen it, well, we're going to share with you that, yes, the pandemic did have an effect. Okay. And so here we go.
Okay, a couple moments first on what we specialize in. We specialize in smart kids who learn differently. Kids who might be visual learners, they're called kinesthetic learners, might be called right brain learners. The kids who learn best when they see and experience information. I almost always have some executive function issues, which means their working memory, their processing speed, their visual processing, their reasoning aren't quite up to the same level as their intelligence. And then something which is highly controversial, but something we're very, very familiar with is visual processing issues. It turns out that most of these, what we call right brain, kinesthetic, or visual learners, have very good peripheral vision, but when their eyes need to focus on the written word or on a baseball or something like that, sometimes fails them. So we look at these things and we look at in the round and look at there's a visual or kinesthetic learner with executive function issues, with visual processing issues. That bullseye actually in the middle represents about half our students. So not every student has all these, but half our students have all three of them. And the other thing that's really interesting about these kids is they're goal-oriented and they desperately want to succeed. Now, a bit about Nate. Yeah.
No, they want to win. I mean,
they want to win.
They haven't chosen to learn like this. They really desperately want to. But quite honestly, everybody is trying to be able to teach them in the way that they think that has worked for them or that works for some group of kids. And part of the challenge is being able to really get where these kids are at, because sometimes what family talk about is that these kids are consistently inconsistent. So you need to be able to meet them where they're at when they're there, right? Some days they get it, some days they don't.
And one of the really important things to recognize is schools don't tend to teach the way they learn.
Right.
They always identify executive function issues in their assessments, but rarely do anything about it. And it's almost as if some deny that visual processing issues exist when they say that's a medical problem. We come from the world of
or that it causes the reading problems, and it's what we're here to say is that it's not necessarily causal.
And that's a whole debate for another night. Dyslexia doesn't cause vision problems don't cause dyslexia. But a kid who's got both of those, for instance, has got problems.
Right. Like you can have arthritis and heart disease, and one didn't cause the other. So yes, here we go.
So the NAEP is something which is big in the education world. It's the only time where one test is given to a large segment of the population, usually 4th and 8th graders. And it's called the National Assessment of Educational Progress. And it was just released on September 1st, 2022. And what it showed is not surprising, but it is alarming. What it shows is that kids in the top 10% lost very little during the pandemic.
But they did lose.
They might have lost a month's worth of work, okay? Not a lot. Struggling students lost 9 months' worth.
It's
Now,
almost an
think
entire
about it.
school year.
Almost an entire student. Think about a third grader who was going to be a year behind going into third grade, but now he's or she is 2 years behind. So not only were these kids struggling, now they've got a gap that's incredibly wide.
And
And
teachers are being forced to teach the curriculum that they're supposed to be getting at whatever grade level that is, right? Third grade or
right.
fourth grade. So,
And one of the important things to recognize, because we have a daughter who's kind of handling 3 jobs in a school right now, is teachers and staff at school are incredibly overwhelmed. They have more problems than they've ever had. They're short staffed in ways that nobody ever thought imaginable because of retirements or people just bolting from the profession because there are a lot of jobs out there for good people. So the challenge now is schools are operating with lower staffing levels and with some teachers who are brand new to teaching, and some might argue, what are they doing in a classroom? But they're there because they need them. So,
okay.
We don't get into politics at all, but we'll say this: be empathetic to your child's teacher. They are juggling things, as one of our clients said. They're juggling kids who are their class are far behind, their kids are far behind, their parents may be sick, and they themselves have been through 2 years of hell. Other than that, it's a fine day. So when you think about who to be nice to, it's always nice to be nice to the car mechanic. It's always great to be nice to the nurse. Be incredibly nice to the teacher, because the teacher is one who spent 6 hours a day, up to 6 hours a day with your kid, and you want them on your side, and they want you on their side too. So what did these NAEPS results show? Again, a month loss for the good students, 9 months loss for the struggling student. Okay. Now, what did data tell us from history? History told us that almost 90% of first graders with a word identification problem will have a reading problem in fourth grade. That was before the pandemic. Now, if a kid's got a problem in kindergarten or first grade, his odds may be 95 or 98% he's going to struggle. And third graders who had a reading problem had a 74% chance of having that same problem in 12th grade, now even bigger. What's equally alarming is this, again, is data from before the pandemic. Kids in middle and high school with disabilities, 45% were reading 3 to 4.9 years behind. Another 34% were reading 4.9. Well, actually, we're reading. I'm sorry, 34% were reading less than 3 grade levels below. The 45% were reading 3 to 4.9, and another 21% were reading more than 5 years below grade level. Again, these numbers are likely to worsen.
That's right, over 60% of the kids, guys.
That says 66% of the kids were going to be reading 3 or more years below grade level before they lost a year.
So, we have a lot to do.
There's a huge hill here to climb. And what
So,
yes.
be able to, besides the whole huge hill, we also have the emotional toll that we don't even mention in this piece. And so therefore, one of the things that we've decided that we're going to do, especially for the beginning of this school year, is to offer special for families, which we'll talk about at the end of our section tonight, to be able to help with that emotional anxiety, trauma, as you will, to be able to help right the ship a little bit. Because can you imagine?
Not everybody's going to stay to the end. Why don't you briefly just describe? So, anybody who signs up for and invests in an assessment before September 30th, what we're including is something of $300 value that's specifically designed to.
Well, it's particularly priceless. Actually, we've had a couple of families that have it's called the Safe and Sound Protocol. Dr. Stephen Porges University of Pennsylvania has done some incredible research over 20 years about vagus nerve stimulation and calming to be able to help kids and families self-regulate. It's because so much when they're so frustrated, we go, and you've probably heard, you're either in fight or flight. Even if they aren't even in fight or flight, there's sometimes it's called even just dorsal. They just can't even get up to be able to get out. I just don't even want to try. Because if I try, I know I can't get it. And if I know I can't get it, why should I even bother to try? So to be able to help with that overwhelm, we've had fourth graders, middle schools. I even had a kindergartner whose sensitivity and anxiety in a week, folks, in a week of being consistent, of listening to this music and listening to it together. It's filtered, specifically filtered music that is meant to be used through the 15 to 30 minutes a day. And I will tell you, it is like nothing we have actually ever seen. It goes above and beyond all the other interventions that we're talking about that are necessary to be able to help our kids be successful. So we're excited to be able to share this with you, as well as some other sort of assessment specials, but we want you to know about it, and we want you to call and ask about it, and check out our website. We'll tell you a little more about it.
And you can call us at 561-361-7495, or I posted the link here. It's 3dlearner.com/book-now to schedule a time for discussion. And again, if you invest in the assessment by September 30th, we'll give you the safe and sound protocol for free. And it is actually something not only your life-changing for your kid, but it actually can be used by other members of your family. So it's really quite a powerful tool.
Okay.
Now, in terms of what can you do about it? One is be aware of the risks. And schools, we actually favor a two-pronged assessment. Schools-based assessments are often needed to diagnose disability and to get services, whether it's what's called a 504 plan, which is accommodations, or an IEP, which includes specialized education plus accommodations. You need to ask the assessment, but we also highly recommend an outside assessment, which we'll talk more about later. And then we also recommend setting goals that go well beyond reading comprehension and math. In a few minutes, we're going to talk about what some of those issues are. And then this is Mary's favorite.
Consider from the bottom up approach. We need to be able to develop a child's solid foundation, whether that be movement, whether that be auditory processing, all processing, visual processing skills, cross midline, being able to get your brain and body to be able to work together. It's a little hard to be an executive unless you were born to it, but it's a little hard to be an executive unless you work your way up. Well, it's true about learning. It's really hard to be able to do all those really fancy cognitive skills if you do not have your brain and body in sync, and to be able to work from getting your neural pathways from the base of your brainstem up to be able to have that work. So that's what we truly emphasize and feel really strongly about, making sure that those are in place.
It's not terribly surprising that Mira's father was a world-class conductor, because what Mira's ability is to integrate so many different tools to help a child succeed.
So we've just listed 5 things to consider if you're a child's school, and then just 2 things to request. Sometimes with Mark went on about the fact that teachers are overwhelmed. So yes, they are. And actually, by the way, you are overwhelmed, and certainly is your child. And they may not be able to put into words exactly what it is that's overwhelming them. They just, I don't get it. And that's kind of your first key that we need to be able to do a little more investigating as to what it is that they don't get. And I'm going to tell you, from all of the work that we're working with middle and even high school students, directions are probably some of the keys. So I don't really want to hear parents say, well, did you read the directions? They may have had their eyes go across it, but we're finding the language of directions is difficult. So again, why read them if I don't understand them? So many students, as we talked about, are certainly far behind. You want to know exactly where your child's present level of performance for both reading comprehension and for math. Now, everyone who has started for a few weeks or who is starting just this week, you're going to hear a lot about being able to have these initial assessments just to find out where kids are at. And that's just really important for parents that are like, I don't want my kid doing all this testing. It's really hard to know where your teachers are going to be able to start to be able to help your child if they don't know where they're at the moment. It's also vitally important for you as the parent to know exactly where your child is at. Oh, my kid knows this. Maybe they don't. Or my kid doesn't know this. Maybe they do. So it works in both directions. You're going to want to understand what the school is doing. And if your child is in a public or charter school, there may be doing something called RTI or MTSS. It's called the response to intervention, or now they're changing it to a multi-tiered system. Check it out.
So,
find out what they're doing.
So a couple of things about it. One, schools sometimes use reading fluency, how well a child reads, as a surrogate for reading comprehension. Reading fluency is vitally important. Teaching sound symbol relationships is important. But comprehension is the key to success in language arts, math, social studies, history, and life. So you want to know what the present level of reading comprehension is and where they're at in math. Now, schools will, even today, 11 years after the federal government gave some clear guidance that said response intervention or multi-tiered system of support, which are a 3 or 4 step process used to evaluate kids before special education services are given. The guidance clearly said that RTI can or multi support cannot be used to delay or deny an evaluation. On this webpage, 3dlearner.com/RTI-MTSS, it shows the
A letter.
It gives the letter and a sample letter to be used. I've had parents who've actually done that on a Monday, and by Tuesday the school called and said we're ready to at least to have that meeting to move forward. Okay, you want to. I encourage parents who've got a kid who's really in trouble, not a kid who might not need the services, but you're pretty sure they're going to need the services, to act immediately. Invariably, what happens is the two processes come together. Schools in Florida have 60 days. Other states it's 30 or 90 or 60 or 90 days to do the evaluation. Somehow, miraculously, a lot of schools merge the two processes so they come to a head maybe in 60 or 90 days versus 6 months or 9 months. So I'm a big believer in moving forward. And one other thing about it, which is true in Florida and maybe in other states, these evaluations are going to be done. The parents are to get the results, look at them, and don't be afraid to talk to your teacher and ask, what do they mean if you're concerned about it.
Word of caution: outside assessments can be quite costly, and they aren't always accepted, nor do they need to be accepted. They say they're used within the report. So please make sure you check on this. So it's like, I don't want to wait for having the school process to be done. I'm just going to go outside. If you want, you're certainly welcome to do that, and we encourage you. We work with a lot of really wonderful professionals from around the country. But just be warned that just because you got the assessment outside does not necessarily mean they're going to be able to use it as a determination to be able to get your child an IEP. Okay.
So a couple of critical steps we recommend. One, if your child's far behind, we like to use the term rejecting the status quo. Success starts with, we were in this situation 20 odd years ago when they told us our daughter wasn't college material. We said no. I got called a pushy, shovey dad. Mary got told she didn't understand things. She understood really, really well. Okay. But schools will somehow tell you, don't worry, it'll be all right. But we even heard some people say there are a lot of kids who are in this boat. I don't really care about a lot of kids. Okay. I mean, I do, because I do a lot of work in advocacy for a lot of kids. But I care about my kids, my grandkids, my clients. Okay. Or people I'm advising. So you want to be a bit selfish in terms of saying, if my kid keeps going down that road and he's 2.5 years behind, he could be 3 to 4 years behind in a couple of years. I want to know what I got to do to fundamentally change that situation.
Right.
Like I said before, create that positive working relationship with your child's teacher at school. Mary, you want to comment on the next comment because you're big on listening to your kid.
Well, your kids may not come out and say the exact words that you think, oh, gee, my kid is really in trouble, but they will. Okay. There are lots of things that I think we've posted even on our Facebook page about definite behaviors that they're wanting some attention. They're recognizing that they're in that fight or flight. If I can't do it, I'm going to do something to be able to catch in one way or another. So take your kids, if you have a dog or a cat or whatever, like go out for a walk and just talk about some other things and sort of casually mention things. And or when you're putting your kids to bed at night, let them be able to offload. Make no judgment about, oh no, honey, that can't be true. Or oh, your kids need to be able to trust you from the very beginning, even from kindergarten, about what they're experiencing, because their experience is their reality. So listen to the words they use. They're telling us definitely in so many ways. I've had a kid that said, oh, I'm terrified of my teacher. I could never ask my teacher anything. And the parent kind of chuckled, but that was real. So listen to what your kids say. Believe me, they are telling us in so many ways.
And we'll talk more about this another time. Set bold goals for what you want to accomplish, because the higher the goals, it expedites the whole process of what's possible.
Right.
And then we talk about partner with the right professionals who help your child not only to improve their reading comprehension of math, but look at those key foundational skills needed for success in school and in life that we'll discuss in a moment.
And also teaching them skills that will help them learn things better, not just getting them through their homework to be able to hand it in the next day. That's just, you need to be able to partner with people that can teach your kids the way they learn best, and having their kids, as I've been talking, like go for that aha moment to aha moment. Unbelievable.
Which is, by the way, exactly the way a visual, right brain, or kinesthetic learner learns. They need some explicit instruction, but when they discover patterns, it's like magic to them because it internalizes the skill within them and they feel great about themselves.
They connect to it in a way that's really, quite remarkable.
Now,
okay.
Goals may differ. I have had schools say to me, a year's gain is the most you can expect within a year's time for this child. And I've challenged that. And in one meeting, we set a goal for a young lady to improve a year and a half, which would have allowed her to get back to grade level within 2 years. And the principal's reaction was, okay, we'll do that goal. But the teacher said, but the level of services we're providing won't allow her to achieve that goal. And the principal, kind of being the straight person for me, went, that's exactly right. That's why we have to change the level of services to allow that student to achieve the goal. So a lot of it in our vernacular is about having a child reach their full potential. Like grade level is not necessarily its kid's potential. You've had kids go from the 20th to the 80th percentile, okay, because they're capable of it. The other thing that drives me insane is when somebody says a student will answer a question right 4 out of 5 times or 80% of the time at her instructional level, which doesn't require growth. It just means she's performing where she's supposed to be performing when answering 80% of the questions correctly. Okay. You'll need to push. You may need an advocate in the room. We provide that service. It's not the main thrust of our services, but we do provide them. Okay. And goals should be at the level that your child's capable of achieving, not at the instructional level. And we actually recommend a 2-tiered system of goals. One that says set the best possible goals you can get with your child's school and have your own personal goals for what you want to achieve when you consider outside help. And again, focus on skills that help the whole child, because working memory, visual processing, cross midline, all these things are rarely touched by schools. And here's a list I'll let Mira go through this. This is
So we're talking about bottom up. Foundational skills, I'm going to go through this rather, not quickly, but sort of move along so that you can get some idea about attention and visual processing, visual motor integration. It's really difficult. We talk about, having kids have their own visual schedule on their desk, because if they have to look across the room, talk about attention or where to look. There's so many things between here and 30 feet away from across the room. Primal reflexes, or also called infants or instant reflexes, are just that. It's our body's ability to be able to preserve ourselves when we get frustrated. So if we see something that we perceive, sort of like the hunter, that we perceive something that I don't recognize or I don't know, and I'm certainly not sure I know how to do it, our bodies react. And it's fascinating piece about this is so much of the time it's when kids just hold their breath. So every kid, all of us have been told, oh, if you're anxious, just take a breath. Well, we teach kids exactly that, because that is a specific reflex. We talked a little bit before about this vagus nerve, the out of sync self-regulation, that we offer the safe and sound protocol, but quite honestly, there are ways to be able to help kids be able to help themselves self-regulate. Anxiety is the overall cloud that goes over all of this. Working memory. Your kids may have wonderful experiential or visual memory, as we call these visual kids. The challenge is, do I have the information when I need it to be able to, that's the information that I need right now when I'm doing this. I don't need to know what a word is when I'm in the middle of doing a math problem, and vice versa. Processing speed, rapid naming turns out to be much more of an issue right now about how fast someone can respond. And we're not necessarily talking about speed, but if it's taking someone forever to be able to take into process, I think we can all relate to when our internet goes down or when our computers are really slow, how frustrating that is. Well, that's certainly happening within a classroom. The ability to be able to ask the right questions at the right time. Our kids understanding things, to be able to know that they are asking the question at the right time versus something that was talked about 20 minutes before, and certainly ignite the love for learning.
Now, this graphic on the right, some of you may see an old lady, some of you may see a young lady. If you're able to and take a look at it and blink your eyes a few times, you might see both. We tend to see these kids as America's future. These are the kids that can change the world. It all depends on our perspective. And once we've got that perspective that this kid can be phenomenally successful, the question then becomes, how do we get there?
Exactly.
Now, we're going to talk a lot more about assessments next week, but just a few key points. If I read 100 school-based assessments, which I've read probably every year for the last too many years, okay, they'll never tell you whether the kid is a visual or kinesthetic learner. They don't focus on how the kid learns best. Executive function challenges are often identified but almost never addressed. And parents often leave assessments overwhelmed with to-dos but not a clear plan. Okay? Outside professionals do a better job of giving a clear plan.
But sometimes there's so many of them that
right.
The teachers go, oh, I'm not going to do any of them because they gave me 120. That doesn't help.
How do we assess? We use something called the structure of intellect, again, which we'll go into greater detail, that looks at how a kid learns best. We also do help parents get school-based assessments. We have something called the mind print assessment that looks at executive function skills. We assess other skills, visual processing, attention, and we also address the present level of performance, reading and math, and then we help you develop goals and a tailored plan. And parents sometimes say to us, wow, is it really possible for my kid to make significant gains in months, not years? And the answer is yes. Okay. You might want to go to our website 3dlearner.com and download our strengths and challenges overview. Visit our YouTube channel, 3D Learner YouTube channel. We encourage that. There's a lot of information there. Okay. But the way to really have a transformation is to engage in a conversation. Okay. It's a no cost, no obligation conversation about what's your child's key challenges, what is it you're trying to do, and we can offer whatever help we want. And again, should you want to invest in the assessment this month, September 2022, we'll include the Safe and Sound protocol with that. And next week on September 13th, we will be discussing in depth how we assess for outrageous success.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We hope you have a wonderful week, and we appreciate all your support. Please don't hesitate to call us. We've been where you are. Believe me, we have. And we are more than happy to have a conversation with you and to be able to try and help where we can and try to be able to find other supports where needed. Again, thanks for having us. Have a wonderful week. Give your kids an extra hug. Bye-bye.
Bye.